Well, it's great to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
So I want to begin our conversation with, we're looking at the calendar 4 years ago, everything stopped on a dime, the pandemic happened, and it really affected all of us in whatever way it did. So I'm curious, how did you survive it and how did it subsequently change you?
At that time, I was in a leadership position. I've been in leadership roles for several years, and we knew that in the couple of days leading up to everything fully shutting down, my employer, which is a very large employer, had made the decision everyone's going to who's a knowledge worker is going to work remotely for some time. And this was a major change. And I was thinking ahead, and I always think about people first, right? I put people first. And I don't mean that in a fluffy way. I mean that in a very real and tangible way. Every single person is a person before we're anything else. We have a whole life, a whole story. And I was thinking about it from the perspective of people and thinking, wow, this is really scary. This is terrifying. This is a major change. And what can I do to support people through that?
Yeah.
And so I jumped immediately into that kind of mode of how can I be there for these teams of people who are all experiencing this great difficulty? And how can I lead through that with a sense of vision and purpose that helps people feel supported, that allows them to continue to collaborate, that allows them to still feel like there's a common purpose? And the thing that I didn't do so well during that time is in trying to take care of everyone else, I didn't do such a good job of taking care of myself. So that was something that I realized in the months that followed that I needed to do a better job of. It took me about a year to catch on to the fact that I really need to make sure that I'm tending to my own needs. I'm a person too. As much as I'm a leader, I'm also a person. And how can I make sure that I'm tending to myself? So I did that through my athleticism, my spiritual practices, through staying connected to people in my life, um, but really becoming more intentional with it.
So let's get to the heart and soul of what you do on a daily basis right now. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of third grade students. It's career day. And one of
Yeah.
the kids says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" What's your answer?
I do a lot of things for a living. I'm one of those people, I can't just do one thing. I have too many interests.
Yeah.
So I'd say that I have three main jobs. We'll call it that. My first primary job is that I'm in a leadership position, which means I'm responsible for leading teams that report to me on all sorts of different things. One of the primary things is infrastructure. So roads, bridges, water, wastewater, stormwater, all those important things that we use every single day and really rely on. So that's my main job. To do with how do we fund that? How do we make sure that bridges don't fall down? How do we make sure that we have safe drinking water and that we're able to drive places? And the second main job is that I teach two courses at a university. One of the courses is on leadership. So, for people like me, how can we be even better and higher quality at what we're doing? How can we think differently so that we can bring people together in even more wonderful ways? And the third thing I do is I'm also a small business owner in a completely different field in the spiritual industry. I've created indie tarot decks, which so a tarot deck is it can be used for all sorts of things. Some people use it for reflection and journaling. Other people use it for fortune telling. Other people use it for guidance and advice for trying to better understand themselves. So those are the three main things that I do, and I love doing lots of different things.
Well, and that's your tag, the intersectional polymath with an entrepreneurial spirit. How did that tag come about?
It came about because, for a number of years, people always seem surprised when they hear about all the different things that I'm doing. And part of it is that I'm neurodivergent. I have multiple neurodivergence, one of which is autism, and the other is Tourette syndrome. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to start swearing. That's
Yeah, yeah, you're
coprolalia.
good.
It's a specific tick. What it means is that the way that my brain works, there are parts of my brain that are firing faster than they might in someone who does not have these types of neurodivergences. And so it means that I have varied interests. I work very quickly, and I really like to keep things interesting. I have to follow my interests. And so people have really struggled. Well, they've struggled to put me into a box because it's natural, right? We're taught to categorize,
Yeah.
but it can be really tough to explain. Well, for some time I said I was interdisciplinary, but that seemed a little too serious, and it also didn't quite capture the idea that I have so many interests in different things, but I've actually acted on them and I've done something with them. And they don't necessarily even always coordinate with one another. My spiritual business has nothing to do with my primary role. Although I would say that the great thing about being human is that we can make any experience we have in one part of our lives applicable to another part of our lives.
Yeah.
So that's how that tagline came about.
So what did you want to be in the third grade?
Third grade, I wanted to be a teacher, actually. I
Okay.
really wanted to be a teacher. And then when I was, I'd say around 17, 18, I started volunteering at a local elementary school. And I did that for a couple of years, and I absolutely loved it. I loved working with the kids, and they even had me teaching an advanced math class to the grade eights, and I absolutely loved it. The thing, though, that I encountered was that I saw that there were teachers who really cared, who really, really cared. And then there were other teachers for whom it was just a job. And, I'm not judging anyone, right? We all need to pay the bills. But I was so worried that what if I end up being one of those teachers who ends up burned out and ends up being one of those teachers that causes damage? I'd never want to do that. And
Yeah.
so I realized that maybe that wasn't for me. Now, all these decades later, as it turns out, I do get to teach. It's just at a university level, and I absolutely adore it. I love teaching.
But that's a good feeling to have going into it because that was the most frightening thing for me. Years ago, I used to work for a YMCA and we'd recruit students. And I would just notice that there were teachers that made it a job. Like, if you're going to have a job, why would you do something that would have that much seismic impact for people, everyone, you know?
I think though that sometimes folks they're not necessarily thinking about that. And I agree that
Yeah,
I tend to I'm a systems thinker, so I'm really good at zooming out and then zooming back in. But a lot of people, it's actually quite normal for people just to make the next decision that's in front of them.
yeah,
And people all are also really um we naturally kind of fill out the scripts that have been presented to us. And so for a lot of people, if someone said, well, you can't really do anything like that with that degree, so you might as well become a teacher.
yeah,
Lots of folks may just believe that. And especially depending on what era folks came up in school, it may not have been in the age of the internet where you can just look up all the cool careers that you can have. So I do, I see both sides of it, but I agree. I would wish that, more broadly speaking, that everyone would have the opportunity to think more critically about the roles that they're taking and how they're delivering those roles.
for sure.
Right.
So obviously you're very inspired, you're very busy. Who's been that hero or inspiration for you?
Hero or inspiration? I would say it was actually myself at the age of 7. I did not have a great upbringing. I'm very open about that. I did not have a great upbringing. And there was this one watershed moment I had at the age of, I think it was between 5 to 7, something like that. And it was a moment of, something really, bad and normal in my family of origin had just taken place, and I was sitting on the floor and I was like crumpled up in a little ball and I was crying. And then I suddenly had this moment where I'm like, wait a second. You know what? I refuse to be like this in the future. You know what? I'm going to be happy. I'm going to be happy in the
Yeah,
future. And, you don't tend to think of little kids as super determined, but boy, did I have some determination. And, I've done it. It's not that life is perfect. I mean, life is still life, The past year has, in fact, been quite challenging. I've been dealing with some very unexpected medical difficulties. But all in all, that determination to create a life for myself in which I was happy has really driven a lot of my decisions and has really pushed me to grow and develop as a person.
So let me ask you this. If you can meet anybody alive on the planet that you find fascinating or interesting right now, who would it be? Who would you love to meet and talk to?
That's a tough one. That's a tough one. I mean, would I love to meet people like Michelle Obama and Meghan Markle? Um, because they're both racialized women who have done amazing things. Um, on the other hand, I like to think that there are so many people out there yet that I don't even know exist who I would love to meet, right? Other people, I'm an ambiguously racialized woman. I've dealt with multiple neurodivergence. I've encountered a lot of challenges along the way as a result, while I've also had a lot of advantages that other folks haven't. And so my impetus has been to navigate in a way that honors all of that while also trying to expand as a person. And so, although there's lots of famous people out there I'd love to meet, I really think that there are so many people who have also, like me, overcome challenges, and I'd love to meet those folks.
Yeah, for sure. So you, in your roles, you have to give out good advice and help people. What's the best advice that you've ever gotten?
That's a tough question, actually, because early in my career, um, I was given lots of advice. And I think that people genuinely meant well. I think they gave me advice that worked for them. Um, and I do give a lot of advice. I tend to give advice that I never received. But I think if I had to think of advice that I've been given, it was actually a professor of mine when I did my master's degree who said that if you have a question and it's genuine, then it's valid. And what she meant is that it's not about stupid questions. Sometimes people apologize before they ask a question, say sorry, but or they say this may be a dumb question, but no, is it a genuine question? Do you really have this question? Well, yes, then ask it. It's
Yeah,
not dumb. It's valid. So I would say that has been really good advice. And the reason that it's good is that, I think people put a lot of pressure on themselves to know all the answers and to not look like you don't know what you're doing. But I think the curiosity is really important.
yeah,
And when we ask questions, that's when we can actually find solutions. Because sometimes in life, we're running around chasing the wrong problem. That if we actually ask more questions, we might be able to get to the real problem. And then we might actually have some answers.
yeah. So what is your motivation every day? What gets you out of bed? What gets you to help people and to evolve as a human? What is that whole motivation for you?
I really, really care about people. Bottom line, I care deeply about people. I think that if everyone had just a little more space within themselves for other people, I think the world would be a dramatically different place.
Yeah,
And I also think that there are a lot of realities that we just can't ignore. They exist, right? Life can be hard. There's lots of difficult circumstances out there. And something that motivates me is that, anything that I've been through, I've always been able to turn around and help other people in some way because of what I went through. And so, to the students that I teach, I also teach a career navigation course at the master's level. And something that I tell them is that, I had to learn a lot of these things the hard way. No one actually gave me this advice, but I figured it out. And
yeah.
now here I might try to shave a few years off of your of your efforts to learn from my experience.
So you got a lot of books behind you. I got to ask you, what's one of your favorite books or one of the most seminal books in your life?
Hmm. There are a lot of really powerful books, if I had to think of seminal books, you know, I would say that it's the combination of books that I've read. I really like reading the classics, or what are considered the classics, but I like to make sure that the authors that I'm reading have different experiences,
Yeah.
right? If we only read people who are, say, upper class English authors, for example, that's cool. They wrote lots of amazing things. But then we're also going to have a limited perspective because it's going to be written by people who had a particular experience in life. So, books that I'm currently enjoying, I love N.K. Jemisin for fiction. She writes fantasy, and her world building is incredible. Her world building is really amazing. And she writes on issues about systems of power and what life can be like if you don't have a lot of power. So, but even if you just love good fiction, she writes great fiction.
Yeah.
Um, but there's a memoir that I really love called Sister of Darkness by R.H. Stavis. I really enjoy that book on the nonfiction memoir spiritual side. And she talks about her experience of having spiritual sight, spiritual vision. And so she talks about that, and it's a really fascinating story. So, for anyone who enjoys reading real stories about people, that's a great one as well. But, I also love the Yi Jing, which is, an ancient Chinese text. I don't read it in Chinese, by the way. I'm not fluent. I read a translation.
Yeah.
Um, but, that also gives a lot of food for thought on reflection.
So if you had a dream tonight, ran into the 18-year-old version of you, and you could give that young version of you a piece of advice based on the wisdom you've gained in your life, what advice would you give?
I would give two pieces of advice. The first piece is take more risks because, I know that as many, thoughtful people are, we're thinking ahead and, we don't want to do anything that's going to create difficulties for us in the future. But, the research has shown we're actually much more likely to regret things that we never did. We're likely to regret things that we just didn't try doing, then we're likely to regret things that we did do. So obviously don't do terrible things, don't hurt people, right? But the risks, I would encourage myself to take more risks. The second thing is that I really wish I had better understood systems and what that means for people who are like me.
Yeah.
So for people who may have a different experience of the world just because of unintentional ways that people perceive those who they think of as different. I wish I'd understood that earlier.
Yeah.
I did figure it out, but I wish I'd understood that earlier because I might have made decisions in slightly different ways.
So of all of the things that you've done, accomplished, and overcome in your life, what are you the proudest of?
that that I have a really lovely family. Like I said, I came from a really tough upbringing where there was no safety or love or nurturing at home. And I've got, a really lovely family that I've really intentionally created now. And I'm really proud of that, and that's saying something because I'm really proud of my career achievements as well. But your the life that you create, the people that you surround yourself with, the love that you choose to bring into your life, that matters.
So everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, colleagues, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I think I am someone who sees the big picture and all the moving parts, and sometimes that means that I struggle to understand why other people don't always see the bigger picture. And I mean, I get it. I logically get it. But there's a part of me that just never quite gets it. I see myself as a very passionate person about the topics that I care about. And I see myself as very determined because I've had to be. It was either be determined or just fade from existence. And that certainly was not an option.
Absolutely. So if anyone out there wants to learn more about you, your writing, anything about your world, where's the best place to go?
They can go to my LinkedIn. It's my LinkedIn with my name and Malumir Logan. And they can also check out my website. I have a blog. I've got hundreds of posts there that I've written there on a variety of topics, which is acornandburdock.ca, Canada. Um, those are the two places they can learn more about me.
Excellent. This has been wonderful. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for opening up. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. This was lots of fun.
Yes, absolutely. And before